It was late September when Jeremy Collins decided to embark on what would be his last solo hiking trip. At 27 years old, Jeremy was an experienced outdoorsman who had traversed some of the most challenging trails in North America. He had a knack for finding paths less traveled, often choosing trails that were secluded, obscure, and, to most people, intimidating. This time, his destination was the Windhaven Ridge Trail, a remote path cutting through the dense wilderness of the Pacific Northwest. Windhaven Ridge had a reputation among locals, a trail marked by eerie tales and unexplained disappearances. Some spoke of strange noises in the woods, others of an overwhelming feeling of being watched. But Jeremy wasn't the type to buy into ghost stories. He saw it as an opportunity to challenge himself and document the beauty of an untouched trail. Equipped with a sturdy backpack, GPS, and a reliable satellite phone, Jeremy assured his family he'd be back in 5 days. Jeremy arrived at the Windhaven Ridge trailhead early in the morning. The air was crisp, and the forest was alive with the sounds of chirping birds and rustling leaves. As he stepped onto the trail, he felt a rush of excitement. The first day was uneventful, the hike peaceful and serene. Jeremy recorded his journey on his YouTube channel. But by mid-afternoon, he noticed something odd. The forest seemed unnaturally quiet. The usual sounds of wildlife had faded, replaced by an oppressive silence. Dismissing it as his imagination, Jeremy pressed on, setting up camp near a small creek as the sun dipped below the horizon. The second day started with clear skies and the promise of more stunning views. Jeremy's spirits were high until he noticed something strange about an hour into his hike. A crude symbol had been carved into the bark of a tree, a circle with an X slashed through it. It didn't look like a natural mark or something left by another hiker. Shrugging it off, Jeremy took a photo and continued on. As the day progressed, he found more of these symbols on trees along the trail. They appeared at irregular intervals, and each time they seemed fresher, as if someone had carved them recently. Jeremy couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Several times he paused, scanning the dense forest, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. That evening, he set up camp earlier than planned. He couldn't shake the unease that had settled over him. While reviewing his footage, he noticed something chilling. In the background of a shot, partially obscured by trees, was a shadowy figure. It was too far to make out any details, but it was unmistakably human-shaped. Jeremy told himself it was another hiker and tried to dismiss it, but the thought lingered as he drifted off to sleep. On the morning of the third day, Jeremy felt a growing sense of dread. He debated turning back, but ultimately decided to push on. The forest felt even more oppressive, the silence deafening. Around noon, he came across something that made his blood run cold. His name, carved into a tree with the same X symbol slashed through it. Jeremy's instincts screamed at him to leave, but he was hours deep into the wilderness. He picked up his pace, hoping to put as much distance as possible between himself and whatever was out there. By late afternoon, he realized he was hopelessly off trail. His GPS, which had been reliable until now, displayed erratic readings, and his satellite phone wouldn't connect. As night fell, Jeremy's anxiety reached a breaking point. He set up camp in a small clearing and built a large fire, hoping it would ward off whatever or whoever was out there. Throughout the night, he heard faint whispers just beyond the firelight. The sound wasn't carried by the wind, but seemed deliberate, like someone was circling his camp. Jeremy's last known communication came early the next morning. Using a brief window of connectivity, he sent a message to his sister. "Something's wrong. I'm being followed. If you don't hear from me by tomorrow, call for help." The message sent chills down her spine, and she immediately contacted the local authorities. Back in the forest, Jeremy was in survival mode. He abandoned the trail entirely, hoping to find a way back to civilization by following the direction of a nearby stream. But the deeper he went, the stranger the forest became. Trees twisted unnaturally, and the air felt heavy, almost suffocating. He found remnants of what looked like abandoned campsites, some with belongings scattered as if their owners had fled in a hurry. That night, Jeremy didn't dare light a fire. He huddled under a makeshift shelter, clutching a hunting knife. The whispers returned, louder and more insistent. And then he heard it. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, approaching his hiding spot. Holding his breath, he peeked out, but saw nothing. Yet the footsteps continued, circling him until dawn. When Jeremy failed to check in, a search and rescue operation was launched. Dozens of volunteers scoured the Windhaven Ridge Trail, but the dense forest and rugged terrain made the search painstakingly slow. They found his abandoned campsite on the third day, his gear scattered and his GoPros smashed. The footage recovered from the memory card revealed Jeremy's escalating fear. But the last recording was the most disturbing. In the final video, Jeremy's face was pale, his eyes wide with terror. "I don't think I'm alone out here," he whispered. Behind him, the shadowy figure appeared again, this time closer. Jeremy seemed to hear something and turned the camera, but the video abruptly cut off. Despite weeks of searching, Jeremy was never found. His disappearance sparked countless theories. Some believed he fell victim to an animal attack or succumbed to the elements. Others pointed to the eerie symbols and the shadowy figure, speculating about a malevolent presence in the forest. A few locals mentioned the legend of the Windhaven Stalker, a recluse who supposedly lived in the woods and targeted lone hikers. Jeremy's family has kept his story alive, sharing his footage and raising awareness about the dangers of remote hiking. To this day, the Windhaven Ridge Trail remains shrouded in mystery, with few daring to venture its path. Those who do often report the same unsettling feeling of being watched and the discovery of freshly carved symbols on the trees. Whether Jeremy encountered a human threat or something more sinister, one thing is certain: his story serves as a haunting reminder of the unknown dangers lurking in the wilderness. And for those who dare to hike alone, the question remains: what would you do if you realized you weren't alone out there? The wilderness can be both awe-inspiring and terrifying, a place where nature's beauty hides secrets that defy explanation. This story takes place in the dense, sprawling expanse of Black Ridge National Park, a remote area tucked away in the Pacific Northwest. Known for its towering pines, crystal-clear lakes, and rugged trails, it's a destination for hikers seeking solitude and adventure. But Black Ridge also holds a darker reputation, one whispered about in hushed tones among locals. Over the years, the park has seen a troubling number of disappearances, with some hikers vanishing without a trace, their fates shrouded in mystery. Eric Marshall, a seasoned outdoorsman in his late 30s, became one such story. Eric wasn't just another casual hiker. He was a man who thrived on pushing boundaries, exploring uncharted territories, and testing his limits. Friends described him as meticulous and fearless, the type of person who would double-check his gear and study maps long before setting foot on a trail. Yet in the summer of 2022, Eric embarked on what should have been a routine 3-day trek through Black Ridge National Park and was never seen again. What makes Eric's case particularly chilling is not just his sudden disappearance, but the unsettling clues left behind. Evidence that seemed to hint at something far more sinister than a simple accident. To this day, Eric's fate remains an unsolved enigma, and his story has become a cautionary tale for anyone daring to venture into the unyielding depths of Black Ridge. Eric Marshall wasn't new to the outdoors. Growing up in Colorado, he spent most of his childhood exploring the Rockies with his family. By his 20s, he had become an avid backpacker, known among friends for tackling some of the most challenging trails in North America. To Eric, the wilderness wasn't just a hobby, it was an escape, a way to disconnect from the grind of everyday life. In the months leading up to his ill-fated trip, Eric had been planning a solo adventure to Black Ridge National Park. He had recently moved to the Pacific Northwest and was eager to explore the region's renowned trails. Eric chose Black Ridge because of its relative isolation. The park's rugged terrain and less traveled paths offered the kind of challenge he craved. He was always prepared, his sister Lauren later recounted. He wasn't the type to take risks without planning every detail. That's what makes this so hard to understand. Eric's preparation for the trip was thorough. He mapped out his route meticulously, planning to hike a loop that would take him through Pine Hollow Trail, past Shadow Lake, and up to the summit of Ravens Peak before circling back. He packed enough supplies for 5 days, despite planning to return in 3, and carried a GPS device, a satellite phone, and a journal he used to document his hikes. He told his family and friends about his plans, promising to check in daily. But Black Ridge wasn't just another national park. Locals spoke of strange occurrences in the area, hikers hearing voices when no one else was around, tents being found slashed open from the inside, and an unexplainable phantom campsite that some claimed to have stumbled upon, only for it to vanish when they tried to return. Most dismissed these as campfire stories, exaggerated tales meant to spook newcomers. Eric, a skeptic at heart, paid little attention to such rumors. To him, the wilderness was just that, a place of beauty and challenge, untainted by superstition. Eric set out on a bright, cloudless morning in early July. He parked his car at the remote Pine Hollow trailhead, a spot that required a bumpy 2-hour drive from the nearest town. According to his initial plan, the first day's hike would be relatively straightforward, a gentle ascent through thick pine forests leading to Shadow Lake, where he intended to camp for the night. The first leg of the journey went smoothly. Eric's social media posts from that day, later retrieved by investigators, showed stunning photos of the forest bathed in golden sunlight, his smiling face framed against the towering trees. "Perfect day for a hike," his caption read. As the sun dipped below the horizon that evening, Eric's updates grew less frequent. His final post for the day was a photo of his campsite near Shadow Lake. In the picture, his tent sat on a patch of grass by the water, surrounded by towering pines. The caption read, "Shadow Lake is living up to its name. Quiet here." Almost too quiet. Day 2 began without incident. Eric's satellite phone log showed he texted his sister a brief update. "Heading up toward Ravens Peak today. Feeling good." From what investigators pieced together, Eric continued along the trail as planned, snapping a few more photos along the way. But by late afternoon, his updates stopped. The first sign of a slight drop in health, 37 pages. The final photo retrieved from his phone was eerie in retrospect, a panoramic shot of the trail surrounded by dense forest. If you looked closely, there was something unsettling about the image, a blurry, shadowy figure in the distance, half obscured by trees. At first, authorities dismissed it as a trick of the light or a photographic glitch. But to those who knew the park's legends, it seemed to match descriptions of the elusive shadow figures said to roam the woods. By the third day, Eric's family grew concerned. He had promised to check in that morning, but no messages came. Calls to his satellite phone went unanswered. By the end of the day, his sister reported him missing, and the park's rangers initiated a search. What they found during their initial sweep was troubling. Eric's campsite near Shadow Lake was undisturbed, his tent still pitched, and his supplies untouched. It was as if he had simply walked away and never returned. The GPS device, which should have provided clues to his movements, was inexplicably turned off, and placed neatly inside his backpack. Even more unsettling were the faint, claw-like marks on several trees surrounding the site. Marks that no animal in the region could reasonably have made. Search efforts intensified as days turned into weeks, but Eric Marshall was nowhere to be found. And as rescuers combed through the forest, they began to uncover clues that only deepened the mystery, hinting at a sinister presence lurking in the shadows of Black Ridge National Park. The search for Eric Marshall was one of the largest in the history of Black Ridge National Park. Over the span of 2 months, dozens of rangers, volunteers, and even experienced search and rescue teams combed the area. Helicopters with thermal imaging scanned the dense forest from above, and sniffer dogs were brought in to track Eric's scent. But the park's rugged terrain and thick canopy of trees made the search painstakingly slow. The first breakthrough came a week after Eric's disappearance. A single hiking boot, confirmed to be Eric's, was found near the edge of a ravine several miles off his planned route. The boot was upright, as if it had been placed there deliberately. Strangely, there were no footprints or signs of a struggle nearby. The discovery raised more questions than answers. Had Eric wandered off course? Or had someone, or something, moved the boot there to mislead searchers? Over the following days, more clues began to emerge. Searchers found a torn piece of fabric snagged high on the branch of a tree, well out of reach for someone on the ground. It was later identified as part of the shirt Eric had been wearing. Then, a notebook was discovered partially buried in a clearing not far from Shadow Lake. The pages were water damaged and smeared with dirt, but a few entries were legible. The notebook's contents were chilling. The last entries, written in shaky handwriting, mentioned shadows watching from the trees and whispers that won't stop. One of the final lines read, "There's a door in the woods. I can't find it, but it's there. They're coming closer." Despite these unsettling clues, no concrete evidence of Eric's whereabouts was ever found. Some searchers reported feeling uneasy during the search, as though they were being watched. Others claimed to hear faint whispers in the wind, though they brushed it off as tricks of the mind. As the weeks turned into months, theories about Eric's disappearance began to circulate. The official explanation from park authorities was that Eric had likely become disoriented, fallen, or succumbed to exposure. But not everyone was convinced. One theory was that Eric had encountered an animal, perhaps a bear or a cougar. Yet this didn't explain the lack of blood or signs of a struggle at his campsite. Others speculated that Eric had fallen victim to foul play, though no evidence of another person's presence was ever found. The more unsettling theories delved into the supernatural. Locals whispered about the shadow figures, dark humanoid shapes that were said to stalk the woods of Black Ridge. Some believed Eric had stumbled upon the phantom campsite, a phenomenon described by a handful of hikers over the years. According to these accounts, the campsite appeared normal at first, but would vanish without a trace, often leaving those who encountered it feeling disoriented and frightened. Another chilling theory revolved around Eric's journal entry about a door in the woods. Some interpreted this as a metaphor for death, while others took it literally, suggesting Eric had discovered a portal to another dimension, or an entrance to something sinister lurking beneath the forest floor. Adding to the mystery were the claw-like marks found near Eric's campsite. Wildlife experts couldn't identify them, and their strange, almost deliberate pattern only fueled speculation. Some searchers began to believe that Eric's disappearance wasn't a random accident, but the result of something far darker. The final and most haunting piece of evidence came months later, when Eric's phone was found deep in the forest, partially buried under a layer of leaves. Authorities were baffled. The area where it was discovered had already been searched multiple times. The phone was damaged but still functional, and investigators were able to retrieve its contents. Among the files was an audio recording, time-stamped the night Eric disappeared. The recording began with the sound of Eric's heavy breathing, as though he was running. In the background, faint whispers could be heard, though they were too distorted to make out any words. Eric could be heard muttering to himself, his voice shaky and panicked. "I can see it. It's not human. It's following me." As the recording continued, the whispers grew louder, almost rhythmic, as if they were surrounding him. There was a sudden crashing sound, followed by Eric screaming, "Stay away!" The final seconds of the recording were a chilling mix of static and what sounded like a guttural, inhuman growl, before it abruptly cut off. The recording was released to Eric's family but was never made public. Those who heard it described it as deeply unsettling, evidence that something beyond explanation had happened that night. To this day, Eric's disappearance remains one of Black Ridge National Park's greatest mysteries, a story that continues to haunt those who dare to venture into its shadowy depths. Despite exhaustive search efforts, Eric Marshall's fate remains unknown. His disappearance has become the stuff of legend, whispered about in hushed tones by hikers and locals alike. Black Ridge National Park, already a place of haunting beauty, is now synonymous with the inexplicable. For every searcher or investigator who entered the woods hoping for answers, they left with more questions and a lingering sense of unease. Years after Eric vanished, stories began to circulate of hikers who claimed to hear a man's voice calling out faintly in the distance, desperate, pleading. Others spoke of feeling an oppressive presence as they walked the trails near Shadow Lake. Some even reported seeing a figure that resembled Eric, standing silently among the trees before disappearing without a trace. One particularly chilling account came from a group of campers who stayed near Raven's Peak. They claimed to have found an old weathered hiking journal hidden beneath a pile of stones. The writing matched Eric's, though the entries seemed to describe events after his disappearance. One line stood out, "I'm still here. They won't let me leave." The journal was reportedly turned over to park rangers, but its existence has never been officially confirmed. For Eric's family, the uncertainty is the hardest part. Not knowing is its own kind of torment, his sister Lauren once said in an interview. "We just want closure, no matter what that looks like." To this day, Black Ridge remains a popular destination for hikers and adventurers, though many tread carefully, aware of the park's dark reputation. Eric Marshall's story serves as a stark reminder of the wilderness's unpredictable and sometimes unforgiving nature. Whether he fell victim to a tragic accident, foul play, or something far more sinister, one thing is certain: the woods of Black Ridge hold secrets that may never be uncovered. And for those who venture too deep, those secrets might just claim another victim. The towering peaks and endless trails of Pine Hollow National Park have long been a magnet for adventurers seeking to escape the monotony of urban life. Spanning over 1 million acres, the park boasts rugged cliffs, dense forests, and serene lakes, offering hikers an unparalleled connection to nature. But behind its breathtaking beauty lies a darker reputation, one whispered among locals and seasoned hikers alike. Over the decades, a handful of visitors have entered the park never to be seen again. Their names are etched into the folklore of Pine Hollow, transforming its idyllic scenery into a setting of dread for those who dare to explore its untouched wilderness. Ethan Harris, a 28-year-old outdoor enthusiast, was well aware of the park's eerie reputation. However, his love for hiking and thirst for adventure outweighed any apprehension. A native of Portland, Oregon, Ethan had grown up surrounded by nature. His childhood was filled with family camping trips, fishing excursions, and late-night ghost stories around the fire. By the time he reached adulthood, Ethan had developed an impressive resume of solo hikes, tackling everything from the Appalachian Trail to Mount Rainier. His Instagram feed was a testament to his passion, showcasing sunlit peaks, secluded waterfalls, and the kind of grit that earned him admiration from his followers. In early May, Ethan announced to friends and family that he would be embarking on a week-long solo trek through Pine Hollow National Park. It was a trip he had meticulously planned for months. His route included both popular trails and less traveled paths, the latter appealing to his desire to experience the untouched corners of the park. "I want to see what most people don't," he had said. Armed with his hiking gear, a GPS device, and enough supplies to last 10 days, Ethan set off with a smile and a promise to check in every evening. The last time anyone saw Ethan was at the trailhead on May 15th. A park ranger stationed at the visitors center remembered him well. "He was cheerful, excited even," the ranger recalled later. Said he was heading towards Sparrow Ridge. Sparrow Ridge was a notoriously challenging area, known for its steep inclines and the rumors surrounding its history. Over the years, hikers had reported unsettling phenomena there: unexplained whispers, shadowy figures in the trees, and even time lapses they couldn't account for. Ethan, ever the skeptic, dismissed these tales as mere campfire stories. But as the days passed with no word from him, those who knew him began to worry. Ethan's family initially chalked up his lack of communication to spotty cell service in the park. Pine Hollow was infamous for its poor reception, especially in the more remote areas. But when 3 days passed without any contact, concern turned to alarm. His older sister, Rachel, reported him missing to the park authorities, triggering one of the largest search and rescue operations in the park's history. Search teams, composed of park rangers, volunteers, and canine units, scoured the trails Ethan had planned to hike. Helicopters equipped with thermal imaging technology scanned the dense forest canopy, while drones were deployed to cover areas inaccessible by foot. Despite their exhaustive efforts, the search yielded no trace of Ethan. No footprints, no discarded items, not even a torn piece of clothing. It was as if the forest had swallowed him whole. The lack of evidence baffled the search teams. Ethan was an experienced hiker who knew how to leave markers and navigate through tough terrain. He had a GPS device and a map of the park along with backup batteries. "It's like he just vanished," one ranger said during a press briefing. "No sign of a struggle, no sign of wildlife interference. Just nothing." Adding to the mystery were the reports from other hikers in the area. Several claimed to have seen Ethan on the first day of his hike, heading towards Sparrow Ridge. However, their accounts diverged when it came to the details. One hiker described him as calm and collected, while another insisted he appeared distracted, as if he were hearing or seeing something others couldn't. These conflicting reports only deepened the enigma surrounding his disappearance. As the days turned into weeks, hope began to dwindle. The official search was called off after 14 days, though Ethan's family continued to search privately, hiring trackers and psychics in a desperate bid to find answers. But just as the case was beginning to fade from public attention, an eerie discovery rekindled interest. The coming Jean Tmu, like excitement for a sporting event, had brought international attention. Nearly a month after Ethan's disappearance, a volunteer searcher stumbled upon an inexplicable find miles off the established trails. Suspended on a low-hanging tree branch was Ethan's backpack. It was dry and appeared untouched by wildlife, despite being exposed to the elements for weeks. Inside were his water bottle, a first aid kit, and several energy bars. All intact. However, his GPS device and map were missing, raising more questions than answers. Not far from where the backpack was discovered, the searcher came across a small clearing that defied natural explanation. The ground was charred in a perfect circle, as if scorched by an intense heat source. Surrounding the circle were unmarked stones arranged in a spiral pattern. There were no signs of a campfire or any human activity that could explain the burn marks. The spiral, meticulously crafted, suggested deliberate placement rather than a random scattering of rocks. When the search team examined the site, they found another unsettling clue: A single boot lodged halfway into the soft earth at the edge of the clearing. It matched the description of the boots Ethan had been wearing. However, there were no footprints leading to or away from the site, as if the boot had simply appeared there. Adding to the mystery were the accounts of locals who lived near the park. Several reported hearing strange sounds on the night Ethan vanished. One described them as distant cries for help, while another claimed to hear a low, droning hum that resonated through the forest. Some even mentioned seeing faint flickering lights above the treetops, though none could provide photographic evidence. Theories began to circulate, fueled by the peculiar nature of the clues. While some believed the backpack and clearing were evidence of foul play, others speculated that Ethan had encountered something beyond the natural realm. A retired park ranger, who wished to remain anonymous, came forward with a chilling tale of his own. Years earlier, he had been part of a search for another missing hiker near Sparrow Ridge. That search had ended just as fruitlessly, but he remembered finding a similar spiral pattern of stones in a clearing, accompanied by the same inexplicable burn marks. "I've worked in parks my whole life," he said. "I've never seen anything like it anywhere else." Despite these discoveries, no further progress was made in locating Ethan. The backpack, boot, and clearing became the centerpieces of endless speculation, each clue a puzzle piece that refused to fit into a coherent narrative. Was Ethan's disappearance the result of a tragic accident, or had he stumbled upon something the forest didn't want him to find? And what of the spiral, a symbol of nature or something more sinister? As whispers of the supernatural grew louder, Pine Hollow National Park became both a point of fascination and fear. Tourists flocked to the area, hoping to catch a glimpse of the clearing or uncover the secrets it held. But for those who ventured too close to Sparrow Ridge, the forest seemed to carry a warning. There were reports of compasses spinning wildly, watches losing time, and an overwhelming sense of being watched. A sensation that sent even the bravest hikers retreating to safety. The unanswered questions surrounding Ethan Harris's disappearance remain a haunting reminder of the dangers, both known and unknown, that lurk in the wilderness. For his family, the forest holds only grief and unanswered prayers, and for those who hear his story, Pine Hollow becomes not just a destination, but a place where the line between reality and the unexplainable begins to blur. The baffling nature of Ethan's disappearance gave rise to a multitude of theories, ranging from the plausible to the paranormal. Among the most discussed was the idea of a tragic accident. Some believed Ethan might have slipped and fallen into an unmarked ravine or crevasse, his body concealed by the dense undergrowth and unforgiving terrain. However, this theory failed to explain the pristine condition of his backpack and the bizarre arrangement of the clearing. Another theory posited foul play. Could Ethan have encountered someone with sinister intentions in the remote wilderness? The isolated nature of Sparrow Ridge made it an ideal location for an ambush. Yet the absence of any signs of a struggle or bloodshed made this explanation equally tenuous. Wildlife interactions were also considered. Pine Hollow is home to bears, mountain lions, and other predators capable of overpowering a human. However, such an attack would have left clear evidence: scattered belongings, torn clothing, or disturbed ground, none of which were present. Furthermore, predators are unlikely to create the spiral stone formation or the circular burn marks. As these rational explanations faltered, more supernatural theories began to take hold. The spiral and burn marks led some to suggest that Ethan might have stumbled upon an ancient ritual site. Local legends spoke of the land being cursed, with early settlers reporting eerie phenomena and sudden disappearances. The spiral, in particular, was reminiscent of symbols found in indigenous lore, often associated with portals or transitions between realms. Paranormal enthusiasts speculated that Ethan's disappearance was the result of an encounter with otherworldly forces. The strange lights and sounds reported on the night he vanished lent credence to the idea of alien abduction. Others believed the forest itself was alive, a sentient entity protecting its secrets by claiming those who ventured too far. A less fantastical but equally unnerving theory suggested that Ethan might have succumbed to a psychological phenomenon known as the call of the void. This condition, triggered by extreme isolation, can cause individuals to experience irrational urges to venture into danger. Perhaps the solitude of Sparrow Ridge played tricks on Ethan's mind, leading him to an area he couldn't escape. Regardless of the theory, one thing remained constant: the sheer enigma of the clues. Each piece of evidence seemed to contradict the next, forming a puzzle with no clear solution. The more experts and amateurs alike tried to piece together the story, the deeper the mystery grew. Much later during the day, Roger Maxwell was relieved of duty. He'd been languished, and while months after Ethan's disappearance, the case took a final, haunting turn. A lone hiker, unfamiliar with the area's dark history, ventured near Sparrow Ridge. As night fell, he claimed to hear faint, distant cries for help, a voice that seemed to echo through the trees. Intrigued but unnerved, he followed the sound until he stumbled upon the infamous clearing. The spiral was still intact, and the burnt circle seemed freshly scorched, as though whatever had caused it was not yet finished. Near the center of the clearing, the hiker found something chilling: Ethan's GPS device lying face up on the ground. When he powered it on, the screen displayed a single, unreadable message, a series of symbols and glyphs that resembled no known language. Before he could investigate further, the hiker felt an overwhelming sense of dread, as if unseen eyes were watching him. Ethan had passed so much for Benjamin in the past 2 years he'd taken it for granted, as if unseen eyes were watching him, simple ungripping the scene. A series of symbols and glyphs that revealed an unknown language. Before he could pass the limit, he failed to gain the house. Ethan could feel the fatality and dread, as if graced by the god of death himself. The hiker's account, while unverified, reignited public interest in Ethan's case. Paranormal investigators descended upon Pine Hollow, conducting their own studies of the clearing. Their findings were inconclusive, though some reported strange electromagnetic readings and unexplained anomalies in their equipment. To this day, Ethan Harris's disappearance remains unsolved. The spiral clearing, the mysterious burn marks, and the unsettling reports of strange lights and sounds have turned Pine Hollow National Park into a magnet for thrill seekers and conspiracy theorists. Yet, for Ethan's family, the forest holds no allure, only heartbreak and unanswered questions. As the years pass, the legend of Ethan Harris grows, a chilling reminder of the unknown perils that lurk in the wild. Perhaps he was a victim of misfortune, or perhaps he uncovered something humanity was never meant to find. Whatever the truth, one thing is certain: one Pine Hollow's mysteries remain as deep and unyielding as its ancient forests. And the story of the hiker who vanished without a trace continues to haunt all who hear it.